Yeah, so we started looking at linear classification, and so last class we looked at logistic regression, right. So you remember the assumptions that we made for logistic regression? Yeah, so we assume that the log odds can be modeled as a linear function, right. So each the individual the probabilities were given by sigmoid functions, right, but the log odds was assumed to be linear, right. That is where we started off with, right, and that gave us a linear decision boundary, right, correct. So the separating surface between two classes ended up being linear, right. So people remember what log odds was? Probability of class 1 divided by probability of class 0, the log of that we assumed that was linear, right. So that is the assumption we made in logistic regression. So today we will look at another one of those discriminant based approaches. So we already looked at two. One was linear regression on an indicator variable, right, and the second one was logistic regression. So we look at a third popular classifier, and also known as LDA. Unfortunately, in machine learning there are two very popular algorithms, both of which are abbreviated as LDA. So this was the older one, okay, so linear discriminant analysis. There is also something called latent Dirichlet allocation, which we will not get into, maybe not, mostly not, right, and which talks about a completely different approach to modeling distributions, okay. It is nothing to do with classification, it is more on modeling distribution, that is also sometimes abbreviated as LDA. So be context sensitive when you use LDA, right. So if you remember, so we are really interested in the probability of a class given the data point, right. We are really interested in the probability of the class given the data point, and you can get this using Bayes rule if you have the probability of the data point given a class, and what else? Probability. Yes, we can fake that. What else do you need? Probability of the class, right. So probability of the data point given class times probability of the class divided by probability of the data point, right. So what we will do is we will start by making assumptions on probability of the data point given the class is K, okay. So these are also known as class conditioned densities, okay, the class conditioned density of the data point, okay. So apologies for that. So I am going to denote by Fk of x probability of x given that the class was K, okay, this is the class condition density, right, and I am going to assume that pi k is the prior probability of class K, right. Right, so we assume that all data points belong to some class or the other, so the that is going to be 1. So now I can write right. Oh, we have been using L throughout, so I will change that to L. Yeah, that makes sense. That is why I told you, you do not need the probability of the data, right. I can always fake that by saying that since the data has to belong to some class, right. So, I can just sum over all the classes, I will get the probability of the data. So, this is essentially marginalizing over class and I get the probability of the data. Okay. And now, depending on the kind of assumptions we make for our Fk, the form of Fk, right, depending on the kind of assumptions we make for the form of Fk, we will get different classifiers, right. So, some of the most popular assumptions about Fk are that Fk is Gaussian. Fk is Gaussian, right, both LDA and a related method called QDA. Any guesses what QDA is? Quadratic discriminant analysis, right. Both of them assume that the class condition density Fk is given by a single multivariate Gaussian. Okay, it is given by a single multivariate Gaussian, right. You could also assume that the class condition densities come from mixtures. So, instead of a single Gaussian, right, you assume that there are multiple Gaussians which jointly generate the data for you, right. So, people are familiar with the concept of a mixture distribution? Yes, no, no, okay. Very simple, it is like a, let us do a little segue here. Suppose I want to model this following distribution over univariate data, right. So, this single dimension, right, and the y axis actually tells me the probability of seeing something, right. Suppose I want to do something like that, right. Can you think of a parametric form that will give me this kind of a distribution? Looks a little daunting, right. So, can you come up with like a closed form expression for this? It looks little daunting, right. But if you think about it, I can look at another Gaussian like that and I can suitably weigh the two of them and I can combine the distributions, right. So, the combined distribution will look like it has two peaks, right. So, this is essentially the idea behind mixture distributions. So, if the form of the distribution I want seems rather complex, right, and I want to have a simpler functional form for the distribution, I can think of writing it as a combination of several simpler distributions, right. So, likewise, suppose my positive class look like this, right. So, how will it look like in a 2D setting, right. So, let us think of it right. So, my data looks like this, right. This is the positive class, there is another class that comes here, okay. So, if you think about it, there are more data points here, right, and then there are more data points here and there is a slight region of lesser density in between the two, right. If I try to model this as a single Gaussian, right, and if I use any kind of maximum likelihood estimate, where will the peak go? It will peak probability will be somewhere here, which is obviously incorrect, right. So, likewise the peak probability will be somewhere here for the negative class, which is obviously incorrect. As opposed to that, if I say that okay, both the positive class and the negative class are created by two Gaussians each, right, and the mixture of those. So, I can have one Gaussian which has a peak somewhere here, another Gaussian which has a peak somewhere here, likewise one for this and one for this, and then I can combine them using some kind of weighting mechanism, right. So, this is what we mean by mixture distributions giving you class densities, okay. So, you can think about this, right. I can have more arbitrarily complex kind of distributions here, and then instead of having two Gaussians I can say okay, I am going to have 10, and also they need not be Gaussians, they could be other functional forms, but the more complex the forms I take, the harder it is going to become solving this problem.
What parameter are we mapping to a Gaussian variable?
So, this Fk of x is this, right. So, Fk, if you remember, is the probability of x given G, right, given that class is K, right. So, this is the probability that given the class is K. So, likewise So if I have mixture of two Gaussians here, that will be the probability of the data point given that the class is x, and here given that the class is whatever dash, right. So that is what we are mapping here, right. So mixtures are fine if we still want to stay in a parametric space, right, but then yeah.
If somebody gives you a high dimensional data and we need to classify that data, then initially how we guess that how many questions
yeah, so that is a hard problem, right. So usually you take some guess from whatever knowledge you have about the domain, right, or you can do some preliminary experiments, okay. You can try to run some kind of rough clustering by varying the number of clusters and trying to see whether you can decide on the number of mixture components. Alternatively, you could do non-parametric methods. They are more complex, but in the last 5-6 years or so, lots of tools have been developed to be able to handle this kinds of non-parametric reasoning. Okay, so non-parametric is actually slightly misleading. Okay, it does not mean that it does not have any parameters. Okay, it only means that it has an unbounded number of parameters. Okay, so it does not mean it does not have any parameters. It is just that I do not fix it a priori. Like we are fixing the mixture component. I am saying okay, there are Gaussians per class, right? I have fixed it. Okay, when you fix these things, we call them parametric, and non-parametric methods typically can add parameters if the data needs it. Right, you can start off with just one Gaussian, okay, and then figure out, oh no, I need more, okay, then I can add another Gaussian, I can add another Gaussian, and so on and so forth, right. So that is essentially what non-parametric methods buy us, right, the ability to grow the number of parameters needed, okay, if it is supported by the data, if the data warrants it, right. So obviously you will have to be very careful about doing things like overfitting the data, but there are other ways of adjusting for it. So like I said, in the last 5 years, a lot of powerful techniques have come up for non-parametric reasoning. But I am not going to cover any of that in the class. Like I keep reminding you people, this is an intro to ML course, right. If at all we do an advanced topics in machine learning course, then we will probably cover some of that, right. So we are hoping to hire a few more faculty members who can start teaching all of these courses, right. And one of the most popular,
Sir,
yeah.
what did you exactly mean by that we have an unbounded number of parameters? How does it?
So I do not fix the bound a priori. I do not say that okay, you can use only 3 Gaussians per class, right. So you can keep adding more Gaussians if the data warrants it. That is what I meant by unbounded. So I do not put the bound a priori. And obviously, I mean there is always a physical bound, but in the modeling sense, I do not bound it a priori. I do not say that oh you have to use 10 Gaussians. Yeah. So the most popular of assumptions that people typically make on FK is sometimes called the naive Bayes assumption. We will deal with this separately. I am just putting it out here to just tell you that all of this come under the same class. Okay. So the naive Bayes assumption is essentially to factor my class condition density along each dimension, assuming given the class one dimension does not influence the other dimension, right. So if I have 2 dimensions here, x1 and x2, so I will say that I can write the probability of x given k as probability of x1 given k times probability of x2 given k, right. That is a very strong assumption if you think about it, right. I am saying given the class, okay, x1 is independent of x2. If I do not know the class, it will look like there is some dependence between x1 and x2, but given k, I will assume x1 is independent of x2. So this is essentially called the naive Bayes assumption because it looks like a very simplistic assumption, right, looks like a very naive assumption to make about the data. So it is called naive Bayes, and it turns out to be powerful in many settings. So we will come back to naive Bayes separately in one of the later classes. So right now, so I am going to go back to Gaussian, right. So I am going to assume that looks familiar. That is the Gaussian distribution. Okay. So you have root 2 pi sigma, okay, so that is sigma. So if I am looking at a univariate Gaussian, I will write the variance here. Looking at multivariate Gaussian, this is the covariance, right, this is the covariance matrix, this is a multivariate Gaussian, right, and here again this is what, x minus mu squared by sigma, right. So this people must be familiar by now, when I say x minus mu transpose x minus mu, that is actually the square, right, in the vector sense, and then by sigma becomes sigma k inverse. This is the covariance matrix. So this is called the multivariate Gaussian, right. So the univariate Gaussian you are familiar about is for this kind of scenario. So the multivariate Gaussian will capture these kinds of scenarios, right. So where the input variable dimension itself is 2, and now I have to have a Gaussian that is actually jutting out of the window of the board, yeah. Okay, is it fine? People are okay with that?